Sociology. If you're taking a sociology class, or if you're about to, you've probably wondered what sociology is, what do sociologists do, and maybe even what a person might do with a sociology degree. This video doesn't answer all of those questions, but it should help you have a better understanding of what sociology is and what sociologists are trying to understand. The short answer to the question of what sociology is that it is the scientific study of human society and social behavior. While that's a nice answer, it doesn't tell us much unless we understand each of its parts. The first thing we need to understand about sociology is that it is a scientific endeavor. Sociology is a science. There's a lot we might say about what science means, or what it means to be a science, but for this video we'll try to keep it quick. The first point is that science is systematic. There is a specific methodology or set of rules to doing science. One of the first and basic rules is that we do our scientific work in such a way that we can share it with others, so that they can repeat it and verify and test our findings. If we do our work in such a way that others can't repeat it and verify our findings usually aren't accepted. One of the most fundamental points about science is that it is an empirical endeavor. People often think that empirical simply means numbers, and while that is partly true, what empirical really means is that it is measurable or observable. Scientific knowledge is based on things that can be measured and observed by anyone. The scientific method is something you should be familiar with from your other science classes. Social scientists and sociologists also use the scientific method as they try to understand society. It's part of the rules or methodology associated with science. This idea isn't often expressed directly, but it is important in science. It is the materialistic assumption. What that means is that scientists try to understand the world using materialistic answers rather than, say, mystical or spiritual or supernatural answers. A quick example might be that if I'm an astronomer studying the motion of the planets in the sky, I try to understand and predict their movements based on math or the laws of physics. I don't ascribe their movements to supernatural beings or spirits. And this doesn't mean that a scientist can't be religious and still be a good scientist. It simply means that science itself is a tool meant to understand material things rather than spiritual or even emotional things. One way of thinking about this is that science is concerned with how things work, whereas religion or other spiritual sorts of philosophies are concerned with who did those things. Another point about science, which is particularly important for sociologists, is that science is concerned with understanding the world, not changing the world. This can be particularly difficult for sociologists because we often study things that we don't like, such as poverty, inequality, or racism. Our goal is to understand how those things happen, how they work in society, not to change those things. In connection with this is the idea that science should be apolitical and also amoral. Now, amoral is different from immoral. We're not saying that science is evil or wicked. We're simply saying that it doesn't make value judgments. It doesn't declare things to be right or wrong, good or bad. It simply tries to understand things as they are. Again, it's a focus on how things work, not how things should work. Science itself is not activism. Now, all of this doesn't mean that scientists can't be activists, or that they don't have a responsibility to use their knowledge in a way that makes the world better. It simply means that science itself is not about activism or change. Peter Berger, in his book Invitation to Sociology, does a really good job of explaining this principle in science as it relates to sociology. If you're curious about this idea, or if you're a serious sociologist, then I would highly recommend that book as required reading. Human society. What exactly is human society? That's a more difficult question than you might think, as not all sociologists agree. I'll discuss this more in another video. For now, there's some basic principles that will help us understand what sociology is. First of all, human society is one population of people who share certain things. They share geographic area, they share a culture, there's a video about that as well. They share some common identity. They share the same political authority. Within society, we often recognize roles. They're common phenomena in any social organization. Examples of roles might be things like police officer, school teacher, president, politician, citizen, and so on. Those roles have relationships to each other and to the society as a whole. The study of these roles and these relationships is one of the primary focuses of sociology, and these things indeed give rise to our understanding of what society is. One of the basic things that societies need to do is survive. When sociologists talk about society, we generally mean a multi-generational society, a society that survives beyond the generation it started in. In order to do this, they have to meet physical needs, such as food, water, shelter, and so on, but they also have to meet reproduction needs. They have to make new people, and they also have to teach those people how to be members of society. These aspects, how society meets needs, we often refer to as economics, and then reproduction, both physically and socially, is a prime interest of sociologists. Social behavior. Social behavior simply means behaviors that are oriented towards others, the groups we belong to or the organizations that we are part of, as opposed to individual behaviors that I undertake by myself or solely for myself. Social institutions are a primary focus area of sociology, and as such there is a video. For the purpose of this video, though, I can give you a few examples of what we mean by social institutions, as they help illustrate what sociology is trying to study. The first kinds of social institutions we might refer to as large institutions. Things like religious groups, a nation even, corporations, government entities, or universities. These fall under the study of what we call generally macro sociology, which there is a video about. There are also smaller institutions, though. Things like families, small work groups, maybe a project team in a company, and then also athletic teams. In addition to social institutions, sociologists are also interested in individual interactions, the kinds of one-on-one interactions you might experience on a date or buying something in a store. These smaller group relationships and interpersonal relationships fall under the study of what we call micro-sociology, which again you'll see another video on. One of the basic ideas in sociology, or one of the basic areas of study in sociology, is the relationship that an individual has with the larger society. This relationship, or the ability to see this relationship more accurately, is what we call the sociological imagination, and it forms a fundamental philosophical basis for all of sociological study. There is another video about this. It's one of the most important concepts that you'll need to know as you study sociology. Simply put, you can imagine the individual, you, out here, and you can imagine society, the them, out there somewhere. They influence you, but in a way you also influence them. This dynamic is one of the key things that sociologists try to understand. As a summary, sociology is the scientific study of society. We study human society and social behaviors. We study everything from large institutions down to individual interactions. And most importantly, we try to understand the relationship between individuals and the society as a whole. This is known as the sociological imagination. The ability to use the sociological imagination is one of the key concepts and skills that you should be developing in a sociology course. Thanks for watching.